This is just a video on wedge anchors. So this is a wedge anchor. So this is for concrete. So one thing you want to do before you hammer these in, they come unassembled. You need to make sure you assemble it and always have at least like 3/16 or 1/4 inch down. So when you hammer this in, you mushroom this out a bit, and you don't try to put a nut on after. But you want to make sure that whereas right here it's flush all the way, and if let's say this post needs to come tilt towards me, we might not have any thread sticking out there. So that's usually what you want to try to do. You got a if it's a 1/2 inch wedge anchor, you get a 1/2 inch hammer drill bit, and you go all the way down. Make sure, it's very important to drive this all the way down, because if you ever have to move anything, or anyone in the future does, they can just hammer the wedge anchor in all the way in the ground. Whereas if you don't, you have to break over how these wedge anchors work. So if this is a 3/4 inch wedge anchor, you hammer this in the hole, and with these little tabs it gets jammed in this hole, and that's why it takes a second to hammer it down. And when you tighten the bolt up, this slides down this tapered shank right on this wedge anchor, and it wedges open. That's why they call it a wedge anchor. It wedges open into the hole. So if you wallow out the bottom of a hole, sometimes wedge anchors won't work, or sometimes I've seen it where it loses grip. So this gets more and more grip the more pull it gets, the more this slides down on this taper. It makes it harder to pull out. So sometimes if you're taking these out and these have a big mushroomed head, and you try to hammer it down, you lose all that grip, and your bolt will actually just spin in the hole. So right here, this is a foot pad that came off. So you can see someone was smart enough to drill all the way through, where 9 times out of 10 when other people install stuff, they don't do that. But I'm going to show you a way, if some places are pretty sticky about hot work permits and stuff like that, I'm going to show you a way how to break these off. And you'll want to do this before you even start to hammer it in. Large adjustable wrench. You see, that's even at a 1/2 inch bolt, that's fine. But you have to keep in mind that this has to be all the way to the ground. So, this is just something like, there you go. And then there you go. Okay, really quickly, this is an SDS bit. So those go in. To get it out, you pull this back and pull them out. This has to be on hammer and drill. About every couple inches you pull the bit up, because otherwise it gets all crammed with stuff. So you can see right here, it seems like either I'm in a rock, or it could be a piece of rebar that runs. So sometimes you just give it a little bit. If there's dust coming up, usually it's just a rock. So right there, what's happened is the bit's gotten caught on part of a rebar, and we had that issue here. So usually you try to actually, you want to wipe this out. Usually we have a vacuum cleaner. We're going to vacuum up all this dust, but usually you want to go all the way down, but here obviously we can't because of the rebar. So I mean, that's just the basics about that. And usually if you have some time and you're legging a bunch of stuff down, make sure you assemble all these, because like I said, you want to have it all set, prepped, ready to go. So one thing we're saying is this is fine for floors that aren't radiant floor, or there's no services running down there. Like if you saw electrical panels and there are pipes going down in the ground, that should give you a red flag that there's pipes running in the ground. And I've seen people like maybe 1% or 5% of factories where if there's a pipe going down there and you drill right through it, it's going to blow your bit up. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is radiant floor heating. So you cannot do this with radiant floor heating. That's usually if there's pipes going in the ground, or if they don't have any, that's when they pump hot water in the concrete, and it gives off, that's how they heat the building. So just food for thought, where this is good for like 90% of factories, but if you go and do this at a really old factory, like Sunoco, for example, you can't, I would not be drilling holes at Sunoco because that's when they have to get an x-ray, and they x-ray the floor because you could drill right into a pipe or electrical conduit and shut the whole plant down.